Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
On a frosty day in February, John the watchman went out into the yard to clear the snow. He was mumbling quietly to himself, humming a song or talking to himself. The children were running, playing, jumping into the snowdrifts, shoveling the snow that the man was so diligently shoveling. "Come on, go to the playground. I'll get you," John threatened. "They are running around here. They don't let you clean it up properly. And no matter what, the headmistress will come. Who's gonna get in trouble for this mess? John, who else?" John grumbled like an old man, but the kids didn't care about him. They weren't afraid of him, so they didn't listen to him. John loved children. He never had any of his own. During the years of work in the orphanage, he every time strongly attached to the new kids, and when they were released from the institution, in the eyes of the man came to tears. He remembered each of them as kids, helping them to button their jackets, put on their boots, tie their scarves when they were going for a walk. Often the nannies would ask him to look after the kids. "Come on, where are your trowels?" John commanded. "Pick up your shovels and come with me to shovel snow." What a mess! The children raced to the storeroom on the veranda, where the equipment was stored. They grabbed shovels and began to throw snow from the past into the drifts together with John. That's how they all worked together and cleaned up almost the entire area. "Good for you, John," praised the man nanny. "You are good with the kids to get along, like to work hard, and there are no dissatisfied. It's a pity you don't have your own. You would have brought up good children and grandchildren. Did you have anyone to have kids with when you were young?" John's youth was wild. "I can't count the number of girls I've been with." But he never thought about a serious relationship. He was a good-looking guy. Girls were chasing after him, and he, as they call it, sailor, but threw without regret. In his younger years, John was fond of motorcycles, often participated in races, competed with other guys on difficult tracks. At one of these races he crashed. He spent a year in the hospital. Doctors literally picked up his bones piece by piece and installed an Elizarov apparatus on his right leg. Later it turned out that the bones had fused incorrectly. They were broken again and reassembled. Complex operations were exhausting, and the realization that he would have to stop motorcycling caused severe depression. A young nurse helped to get rid of apathy to everything around. "So what if you are lame?" she comforted the young, handsome guy. "The main thing that you are alive. Be glad that we have a surgeon from God. Others would have long ago put a cross on you." The girl in a white coat with blue eyes and a long braid became his outlet. Every time he waited for her shift to start, and she would enter the ward to bring medicine to a patient. Sometimes Veronica treated him to homemade baked goods. "Here, help yourself. Grandma made them, but we can't eat them all." She offered John the ruddy pies. "You must have missed home-cooked food." And he was happy to devour the concoction. "Culinary goddess, your grandmother, Veronica," praised the guy. "Very tasty in 'em." When John was allowed to go out with crutches, Veronica sometimes went for a walk with him in the hospital square. They would sit on a bench and talk. Veronica was preparing to enter medical school. She wanted to become a pediatrician. "So you love children?" John asked. "Yeah, how could I not love them?" Veronica answered. The guy did not understand her enthusiasm for snotty kids. Children did not interest him at all. For John, they were akin to aliens, creatures that are very difficult to understand. It was much more interesting to mess around with machinery. That was the guy's calling, he thought. During the years spent in the hospital, Veronica had become very close to him, almost family. Sometimes it seemed to him that he was drowning in her blue eyes. At such moments, John wanted to grab the girl, squeeze her in his strong arms, kiss her on the lips, as he did with other girls. But Veronica wasn't like that. You couldn't do that to her. And the guy felt it. So he just looked at her and admired her beauty. "Here, I came to say goodbye," Veronica said one day, entering John's room. "I'm leaving. I'm going to take the entrance exams to medical school." Even though John knew about the nurse's intention to enter the institute, this news came as a surprise to him. "Already?" "Yes, it's time." The girl took his hand. "You get well, get well. Everything will be fine." Memories of many years ago overwhelmed the watchman of the orphanage. He stood leaning on the shovel, for a while disconnected from what was happening in the yard. Suddenly, John heard a scream. Uncle John, come here quickly, called Ivan, nicknamed Carrot Top. What's the matter? The watchman called out. Hurry, there's a man freezing here, shouted the boy. John followed toward the gate, where Carrot Top was waving to him. The boys were so engrossed that they had already cleared the snow all over the area and approached the gate. When they opened the gate, they stared in amazement at the snowdrift. Almost completely covered with snow, frozen, seemingly inanimate, a little boy was sitting in it. In his hands, he held a plush doll. Run, call the babysitters, John hurried the boys. The boys, with a shout of help, rushed to the building of the orphanage. The guard grabbed the child in his arms, shaking off the snow from his jacket, carried along the path. In the foyer, the child was stripped. On the screens ran to the educators, nannies, and a medic. The boy was severely hypothermic, said nothing, and did not even cry. He looked about 5 years old. My God, how long he sat there in the snowdrift, wailed nurse. It's who left the child on the street. How did he ended up here? Don't interfere, the nurse asked. She carefully took off the boy's clothes, examined him, quietly patted his cheeks. Boy, what's your name? Can you hear me? The child was silent. Help, asked the nurse to the watchman. He took the child to the medical station. There they laid the boy on a couch, rubbed his body with alcohol, wrapped him in a blanket. The nurse brought hot sweet tea from the kitchen. It was carefully drunk from a spoon. The child obediently swallowed. The children crowded outside the door, murmuring, making their own assumptions about where the foundling had come from. Maybe they stole him and then wanted to ransom him, said Carrot Top. No, he was just abandoned by his parents, Olivera argued. I was also abandoned, but not in winter and at the train station. There were a lot of people there, immediately picked up. Maybe he ran away from home, Kira suggested. He's so small. What are you talking about? Babies don't run away from home. Carrot Top interrupted her expertly. The door to the nurse's station opened, seeing the children. The teacher strictly ordered, Come on, all go to the playroom. There is nothing to stand here and make noise. Don't you understand that the boy needs peace? Now he will sleep, then you will get acquainted. The boys obediently wandered down the corridor, not stopping the argument about where the foundling had come from under the gates of their orphanage. The boy was fine. The nurse was afraid that the child would get pneumonia. The kid had been sitting in a snowdrift for at least several hours. Most likely, he was left there at night. But the child got off with a cold, fever, and a little cough for a few days. Care, medication, and warmth did their job. The child recovered. Catherine was the kind of woman who used to achieve everything by her own efforts. Her parents were not rich people, simple workers at the factory, so you could not count on financial support from their side. After graduating from school, she entered technical school and then was hired to work in an advertising agency. Ekaterina was a talented web designer. Her personal client base was expanding very quickly. Customers wanted her to design their advertising projects, flyers, brightly colored brochures, posters, and other products. You have an incredible sense of color, Catherine, praised her another client, looking at the finished advertising product. We have a new product coming up. Could you develop for us a new slogan and concept of advertising? A large customer has applied. The case is very responsible. We can only entrust it to you. Our management is delighted with your work, complimented the assistant head of a large industrial enterprise, receiving his order. Ahead of the elections to the city council, Catherine was called by the boss. Catherine, I would like you to take the order from the candidate for Deputy Walker. He promises a good fee, and if Walker passes in the Duma, he will pay you the same amount. The boss peeled off a blank sticker from the packet and wrote on it a number with 5 zeros. Catherine's eyes went to her forehead. She had never made so much money before. Walker wants you to take over his entire campaign from start to finish, developing the concept and all the materials, including newspaper articles, flyers, posters, banners, TV ads. The offer was more than tempting, but at the same time responsible. Catherine lived in a rented apartment. She had long wanted her own, even a small, but their own. It was a chance to finally buy a place to live. The boss looked carefully at the thoughtful Catherine. I hope you realize that for the duration of the election race, you will have to give up all the orders that you have now in the work, she said to Catherine. Hand over the projects you've started to your colleagues, you decide for yourself. This was the largest project for all the time Ekaterina worked in the advertising agency. She was both excited and worried at the same time. Hurrying to the meeting with the candidate and his assistant, she mentally began to develop the concept. Beforehand, the girl studied the experience of election campaigns in other agencies, analyzed mistakes that could reduce ratings, studied materials about Walker. She came to the meeting prepared for a business conversation and productive cooperation. Have a seat, invited the man in the jacket. I will not hide, you are highly recommended to us as an excellent specialist with an unconventional approach to business. Now we have only one serious competitor in the city council elections. Our task is to beat him. I hope you are satisfied with the fee. Absolutely, answered Catherine. I give you full carte blanche. You will probably need money for current expenses. Our accounting department has already been notified. You can apply at any time. You will be issued the necessary amount. Walker was silent for a while. You must realize that we will not be economizing, so use any tools you can. There are 2 months until the elections. The deadline is very tight, so I hope for your promptness. Solve all questions with my assistant. You can also contact me directly. Back at the agency, Catherine handed over the projects she had started to other employees. Without hiding their envy, they watched as she collected in her bag a laptop, some papers, flash drives, disks. For the next 2 months, she would rarely appear at the agency. Campaigning would require personal attendance at candidate events, business trips, accompanying Walker to meetings with constituents. Harvey, she addressed the lawmaker. The analysis shows that you have the business community on your side. Entrepreneurs, heads of enterprises trust you, but you need to get the support of ordinary citizens, ordinary residents of our city. It is their votes, given in the majority, will be decisive. I'm listening to you. What do you suggest, Catherine? I propose to make an interview at your home. I would like to have members of your family, a homely, pleasant atmosphere, smiling faces. That's not a question, Walker replied. Appointed day, I will prepare the family. On the appointed day, Catherine, accompanied by a video cameraman from a local television station, arrived at the Walker home. They were met by an aide to the candidate for deputy, escorted into the luxurious living room. You settle in, get ready, the family will be down soon, he said. Something to drink? No, thank you. Catherine looked around. The furnishings were impressive. Expensive furniture, paintings, a fireplace with porcelain figurines. Expensive rich, thought the girl. Luxury in the house seemed to her more of a menace than a plus. When you do the shooting, try to keep all these vases, statuettes, paintings in gilded frames out of the frame. She asked the video operator. It's no use. It may turn people against Walker. We don't have a wealthy population. Get the faces. Soon the family members entered the living room. The candidate's wife looked stern, tense. Relax, dear, Walker told her. Nothing is wrong. Be natural. Speak calmly. Smile more. What am I supposed to do? A girl of about 14 asked. She was wearing ripped jeans and a brightly colored t-shirt. First of all, go change your clothes and wash off that war paint. Her father pointed at her provocative clothes and makeup. Why should I, Dad? The girl resisted. My first time on TV will be shown, and I as a gray moth will look like. I said go, change your clothes and wash your face, gathered like an Indian at war. Hey everybody, a guy came into the living room. He looked to be in his early 20s. He was wearing jeans and a white sweater. He had a neat hairstyle that suited him well. I'm ready, Father. He turned to Walker. Tell me what to do. When everyone was assembled, Catherine seated the family members on the large sofa. A beautiful coffee set was placed on the table in front of the household. Catherine sat opposite. Let's begin, the operator commanded. We are on a visit to the candidate for the city council, Harvey Walker. Introduce us, please, with your wife and children, began Catherine, looking into the camera lens. The interview was conducted according to the scheme developed by Catherine in advance. The questions were discussed in advance, and the answers were not unexpected for her. Father for me and my sister is not just a father. He is our friend, said the son of Walker, and Catherine carefully watched the guy. There was something special about him. He differed from his mother and father, lack of arrogance, spoke easily, not shy of the camera, as if his whole life gave interviews. We could always turn to him for advice. Despite his busy schedule, his father finds time to watch an interesting movie or have a picnic with us. Well, that's a bit of a mouthful, Catherine thought. She could not imagine Walker sitting on the grass surrounded by his family, or how he roasts meat on the grill. When the shoot was over, Catherine thanked the family for their time and said goodbye. On the day of the election, all participants of the election campaign were worried. On television, every 2 hours announced the preliminary results. Walker then surged ahead, then again rolled back a few hundred votes, losing to his main rival. But the final tally showed Walker winning the city council. In the headquarters of the now deputy reigned a joyful atmosphere. Participants of the race were jubilant, pouring champagne into glasses. To Catherine came Walker's son, handed her a glass. "I congratulate you," he said, smiling. "Why congratulate me? Your father should be congratulated," Catherine replied modestly. "Don't be modest. You played not the least role in this election campaign." To hide it, Catherine was proud of herself. This was the biggest project of her short career. It boded well for her future. Ekaterina already had no shortage of customers, but now it would be a completely different fee. It was well past midnight, but the campaigners did not leave. "It's so noisy in here," Carlos said, smiling. "Shall we run away? We have, after all, the right to take a break from the crowds." The champagne was intoxicating, Hetty. The mood was excellent, wanted to walk and return home, and stay alone was not any desire. Catherine agreed to Carlos' proposal. Taking her hand, handsome young man hurried to the exit. At the porch stood his car, a beautiful foreign car with a convertible top. He sat Catherine down and they drove off. The car raced along the lantern-lit highway past the houses where the townspeople had long been asleep. "Can I turn up the music?" Catherine asked. "Anything for you?" The guy answered and pressed the button of the tape recorder. He stopped the car on the shore of the lake, took out a bottle of champagne from the back seat and a couple of plastic cups. "Shall we have a drink?" Catherine agreed. She liked Carlos more and more, despite the fact that his father holds a high-ranking position and from today can legally be considered a deputy of the city council. The guy talked to her as an equal. He did not boast of his origin, as modern majors did. When Carlos moved toward her to kiss her, Catherine suddenly for herself did not turn away. He was gentle, and she dissolved in his caresses and touches. "You are very beautiful," he whispered in her ear. Catherine's heart was pounding frantically. Her breathing became heavy. A faint moan escaped from her chest. Something extraordinary was happening to her. She herself did not realize how much passion lies in her body, how much desire could awaken in her this unfamiliar guy. Then she lay, pressed against him, feeling absolutely happy, and in the sky dawn still barely visible. Catherine had a legal day off. After the election campaign, her boss allowed her to rest for 2 days, after which Catherine was to begin her duties at the agency. Walker did not cheat. In the morning, a message arrived on the phone. The money for the work was transferred to Catherine's account. The amount, as promised by the deputy, was doubled. The girl was jubilant. She is a good girl. She was able to earn her own housing. In the near future, she will look for an apartment. The doorbell rang when Ekaterina was drinking coffee in the kitchen. Fixing her disheveled hair, she went into the hallway. On the threshold stood the courier. "This is for you," he said, holding out a bouquet of snow-white roses. "For me? And from whom?" the girl asked. "I do not know. There is a note in the bouquet," said the courier. "Please sign the document." He handed Catherine a receipt and a pen. Closing the door, Catherine took out the note inserted between the buds. "To the most beautiful girl in the world, I'll be waiting for you at 7 p.m. at the cafe in the plaza. Carlos." Absolutely happy, Catherine spun around the room with the bouquet in her hands. Then suddenly she stopped abruptly. Wait, he's asking her out on a date. And what to wear? Dresses, blouses, skirts flew from the closet. Finally, the girl chose a blue dress with a small floral print. It suited her very well. All day she spent in anticipation of meeting Carlos. Every now and then, looking at the clock, she thought that it was going too slowly. Each minute was an hour long. Carlos was waiting for her at a table on the cafe's open summer veranda. "You look beautiful," he said, motioning Catherine to a chair. "Let's order something. To be honest, I'm very hungry." Carlos handed Catherine the menu, looking at the countless dishes she suggested, "Or to your taste." They had a wonderful time, drinking wine, talking and laughing a lot. In the small cozy cafe they sat until closing time. It was already dark outside when Carlos drove her to the entrance. Catherine did not want to part with the guy, and he did not let go of her hand for a long time. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. Gladly, his calm smile gave Catherine confidence that she was doing the right thing. He didn't leave until early morning, promising Catherine that he would call. She fell into a happy sleep and slept until just before lunch. She spent the whole next day at home, and from Monday, she went to work at an advertising agency. Carlos did not call. It tormented the girl. To distract herself from sad thoughts, she completely immersed herself in her projects. The working day was over. Immersed in her thoughts, Catherine left the agency. Opposite the entrance, she saw a familiar car. Carlos waved hello from the car. Catherine rushed to him. "Get in, let's go, open the door, guy." "Where to?" Catherine asked. "You'll soon find out," he said mysteriously. The car started and raced through the streets toward the exit of the city. Carlos brought the girl to a small recreation center. The place belonged to Carlos' father. He came here with his partners and colleagues to fish, relax, cook meat on the grill. "No one will be here today, only the watchman," Carlos said as he led Catherine down the narrow path to the log cabin. "We can be alone together." The girl was happy. There was such beauty around, a river, a lake, near the shore of which a boat was rocking. When it got dark, they melted the fireplace in the house, sat on the floor, embraced. "I would sit with you like this all my life," the boy said quietly. "And I," echoed him Catherine. "It is a pity only to part," he suddenly said. "Break up? Why?" Catherine asked anxiously. "Father sends for an internship abroad," and his voice was heard sadness. "We must go." "Soon? For how long?" "I leave tomorrow. For a year from now, and then we'll see." They were silent. Each was thinking of his own. "This is the end of my little happiness." The girl could not imagine how she would live without these meetings with Carlos. The next day, he flew away. 9 months later, Catherine gave birth to a son, named him Anthony. "Oh, Catherine, I had such great plans for you," upset said the boss, called Catherine in his office. The girl's belly was already tracheotously visible. It was pointless to hide the pregnancy. She had to say that in 2 months she will go on maternity leave. "Who will work?" "I'm not talking about your regular customers. They'll leave us as soon as they find out you're no longer working." "Sarah, I will work until the birth, and then I can take projects at home," assured Catherine. "I don't know what it's like to work alone with a baby," the boss said incredulously. "But if you work as much as you can, as much strength is enough, and then take on at least part of the clients, I will be very grateful to you." On the fee from the election, she was able to buy a small 2-bedroom in a bedroom community, far from work, but their own place, not rented. Catherine carefully arranged the apartment, bought curtains, ordered furniture. Billy, a colleague at work, volunteered to assemble the kitchen cabinets. He had long liked Catherine, but he did not even count on reciprocity. To help put things in order came a friend, Angelica. She was scrubbing the floors, pulling up her skirt and pulling up the hem at the waist, gibbering silently, wringing the rag. "Lucky you, Catherine, your own apartment. It will be where the baby go wild. And you have already decided where you put the crib and the changing table. And I have not bought any of this. It's too early and there is almost no money left. Tomorrow they're bringing the sofa into the living room. Do you need a mover?" Billy volunteered to help carry the couch up to the 3rd floor. "Of course I do. Thanks to you guys for helping out." Angelica took off. She had a date. Billy stayed for tea. "Didn't yours call?" he asked. "No," sighed the girl. "No word. That's what those rich sons of bitches do to girls. If it were me, I'd never leave you." "You're not in his place, Billy, don't start." Catherine didn't like the reasoning of her colleague about her personal life. She noticed that he was treating her in a special way, showing signs of attention. This fact did not please her, but it was difficult to do without male help in her case. Billy had helped her carry the groceries home, and he had laid the tiles in the bathroom himself. She didn't have to hire laborers and pay extra money. "When are you going to buy a crib?" Billy changed the subject, realizing that Catherine was going to get angry and kick him out, and he wanted to stay with her a little longer. "Next week," she answered, stroking her rounded belly. The baby was already kicking in the womb. Catherine shuddered at his unexpected movements and rejoiced at the same time. "Do you want me to go with you?" Billy suggested. "I'll take my father's car and we'll bring everything at once. Buy a stroller, a crib, a bathtub. What else is needed for the baby?" "That would be great," Catherine agreed. Billy kept his word. One day they took an early day off work and went to the children's world. What was not in this huge store? Toys, clothes for newborns, bottles, pacifiers, baby food. Passing by the counters, Catherine could not contain excitement. "I want to buy all this for my boy," she said to Billy. "Look at that. What a bicycle." "So he's a long way from a bicycle," laughed the guy. At Catherine's house, he assembled a crib, screwed the wheels to the stroller. "Beauty, you are good," praised the girl. "Deserved tea and cookies." They sat in the new kitchen. Billy was slowly stirring the sugar in his cup, thinking about something. Suddenly, he looked Catherine straight in the eye and said, "Marry me." She was dumbfounded and silent. Billy had done so much good for her lately, cared so much. She didn't want to hurt the guy, but she loved Carlos. Catherine still hoped he would come back. "Billy, I'm sorry, but you know I don't love you," she began cautiously. "It doesn't matter. The main thing is that I love you," the guy assured her. "You'll be at ease with me. I'll love your son as if he were mine own. I'll take care of you, take care of you. I will do everything so that you will not regret for a minute about your decision to marry me. Catherine, I do not rush, you think, but only not too long. The child will soon ask for the white light." Catherine sat at the table with her eyes down. When Billy left, she thought, "Billy's right. It's hard to raise a baby alone, and a boy at that. The child needs a father," and Catherine made a decision. A month before the birth, they registered their marriage. Billy moved in with Catherine. They began to live together. The guy really took care of his young wife. He cooked dinner coming from work. He himself loaded the laundry into the washing machine and hung on a rope on the balcony. On weekends, did the cleaning and took Catherine for walks. On the appointed day, he took her to the maternity hospital. Every hour he called the emergency room to find out if his wife has not given birth. "Daddy, you calm down," they told him on the other end of the phone. "You don't have to call here so often. Your wife will give birth and call you herself. Don't worry, she's not the only one giving birth here." The boy was born healthy. Catherine looked fondly at the baby lying in the hospital cradle. It seemed to her that he looked incredibly like his father. The same features, the same nose and dimples on his cheeks. Anthony was unusually calm. Catherine rested a lot, recovered quickly, and was discharged home. She was greeted from the maternity hospital by Billy and Angelica. The young dad had flowers in his hands, as well as cake and candy for the medical staff. "Check, Daddy," the nurse said jokingly as she undressed the baby and was about to dress him, to make sure all the fingers and toes were in place. Billy was confused. The tiny infant was lying there, shaking and looking at him with all eyes. The nurse put an opening on him, a bonnet, wrapped him in a diaper and then in a newborn envelope. She handed the baby to Billy and he accepted it with trembling hands. Catherine's husband didn't let Anthony out of her arms all the way home. "Let me carry it, too," Angelica begged. "No, it's our treasure with Catherine," answered Billy proudly. At home, they celebrated the event. "A new man was born on the planet Earth," said Catherine's friend solemnly. "Let his path be successful. Let nothing overshadow the joy of life." Catherine took a month's vacation, then promised to go to work remotely from home. Anthony slept a lot. The young mother had plenty of free time. Billy went to work every day, and in the evening rushed home to walk with the stroller in the yard to help his wife bathe their son before bedtime. They had already been married for several months, but there was no intimacy between the spouses. Catherine every time found a reason to refuse Billy. At first, he treated with understanding, say, after childbirth, she needs to recover, and the child takes a lot of time. Tired, his Catherine. But one evening, when Anthony was sleeping peacefully in his crib, Billy tried to hug his wife, his hands insistently pulling up her nightgown. "Don't, Billy." Catherine tried to push her husband away. "You have to, you're my wife. I can't go on like this. He piled his whole body on top of her. Catherine gave in. Now Billy did this to her regularly. Catherine then could not sleep for a long time, continuing to feel his touch on her body. Being close to her husband did not bring her joy. She was grateful to him for everything, but did not love as she loved Carlos, who disappeared from her life suddenly as well as appeared. "The other day I will go to my parents," said one day at breakfast Catherine. "My father was ill, I should check on him, and my mother wanted to see her grandson." Billy was finishing his sandwich. "Go, I'll take you to the bus station," he agreed. "When you get back, call me and I'll meet you. I know your mom, she'll put the bags with preparations on you again." "Okay, I'll call." Catherine diluted the mixture in a bottle and went to the bedroom to feed Demachka. The next day, Billy escorted her to the intercity bus, carefully sat her down, got off and smiling waved. Anthony slept the whole way, woke up only at Katia's stop. "Daughter, how glad I am that you came." Catherine's mother met her on the platform. "I didn't think so. How was your trip? Are you tired?" "I'm fine, Mom. Anthony slept the whole way," replied her daughter. "Well, let's go quickly. Father is alone at home." No matter what happened, the woman hurried, taking from her daughter's hands a bag with children's things. "Mommy, how good it is at home," rejoiced Catherine, undressing the baby. "I missed you so much, just no strength." Ekaterina's mother sat down next to her, looking at her grandson. Since the last time they met, he has grown noticeably. Dark hair on his head curled in rings. "Curly, like you as a child," said Grandma Anthony, smiling. His father came out of the bedroom. He couldn't wait to hug his daughter and see his grandson. "Well, Anthony, let's get acquainted," he said, taking the little boy by the hand. He immediately grasped his grandfather's finger tightly. "Wow, what a strong, rich man is growing, and I am your grandfather." "Dad, how is your health?" with anxiety asked Catherine. "Yes," creaked slowly, the man replied. "Old age then it is, no one has not yet given strength." "Come on, what old you are still go-go," tried to cheer up his father Catherine. "Do not calm down here. Even mother in the vegetable garden cannot help. Legs do not hold," complained father-daughter. "She alone, all the burden on himself pulls." "Nothing, I will help," promised Catherine. All day long, she and her mother weeded the beds, loosened the soil, watered, fertilized, picked berries. In the evenings, locked in the kitchen, they made jam and poured it into jars. "Take it home and give it to Billy," my mother said. When it was time to return, the parents could not part with their daughter and grandson for a long time. Catherine's mother packed 2 bags with cans. All together, they dragged them with difficulty to the bus, loaded them. "How are you going to carry all this from the bus station?" the mother complained. "I'll call Billy, he'll meet me," Catherine replied. When the bus entered the city, she took out her cell phone from her purse. The screen treacherously did not turn on. The battery was dead. Catherine was upset. How could she, with a baby in her arms, and even with these cans? It was her own fault. She should have checked whether the cell phone was charged at her parents' house. She was the last to get off the bus. The driver helped her unload her bags. Ekaterina struggled to get to the nearest car with checkers on the roof. "Are you free?" she asked the driver. "Get in," he replied, helping the girl to load the bags into the trunk. At the entrance of her house, she paid the cab driver, exhaled, and looked up at the third-floor windows. "Surely Billy couldn't have known we were coming back, so he didn't meet us," she thought as she opened the door to the entryway. The way to the apartment was more like an ordeal. The girl lifted her son to the next floor, sat him on the steps, and ran downstairs to get her bags. Then again, first the child went up the stairs, then she went down for the bags. Finally, she found herself at the door of her apartment. Catherine opened the door with her key. "Billy," she called out, but no one answered. The girl threw off her shoes, went into the living room, put her son on the sofa. From the bedroom, she heard strange sounds and a woman's voice. Catherine opened the door and was stunned. In bed, without noticing her arrival, Billy and Angelica, her friend, were having fun. Angelica was the first to notice Catherine. She moved away from Billy and covered herself with the sheet. Billy looked up too. His wife's arrival was a surprise. "Catherine," was all he could utter. The girl covered the door. She sat down on the couch next to her son and began to undress him slowly. The first to come out of the bedroom was Angelica. Catherine, well, you this, do not think anything bad. Peacefully, she began to justify herself to her friend, and then suddenly spoke in a steely voice. You yourself to blame. The man needs attention, affection, and you are like a block of snow, like a rock icy. You can't be approached by a lame mare. Angelica slammed the front door. Billy came out of the bedroom. He didn't seem to feel guilty. On the contrary, it was her fault that Catherine hadn't warned him of his arrival. She should have called. Then this awkward situation wouldn't have happened. Billy went to the kitchen and sipped from the bottle of vodka he had started. Returning to the room, where Catherine neatly put Anthony's things in the closet, he asked, "Why didn't you scandalize? Do not accuse me of cheating." His tone slightly slurred. Catherine was silent, then led her husband into a frenzy. Too proud, right? Even more turned on Billy. Who needs you with your pride? He approached her, breathing the booze in her face. Catherine tried to pull away, but a hard punch to the face made her stagger and she fell to the floor. Billy leaned over her, hissing, "I'll have you like silk from this day forward." He went into the kitchen, shut himself in and poured vodka into a shot glass. Catherine cried quietly. Anthony looked at his mother rising from the floor with surprised eyes. From that day, Catherine's husband changed not for the better. He often came home drunk and sometimes returned in the morning. Scandals became commonplace in their home. From the shouting, "Stepfather," Anthony woke up, began to cry, even more infuriated Billy. Catherine was still repeatedly hit. She tried to leave, to close herself in the bedroom, not to be seen by her drunken husband, but he found her. Again and again accused her of coldness, that she did not love him, and he is raising her fattened child. Where? He yelled, once again, coming home drunk. Where's his daddy? He doesn't want you. Dumped you? He had fun with you and left you. Once again, smearing a black eye in the bathroom, Catherine suddenly felt bad. She sat down on the edge of the bathtub. She felt dizzy, violently nauseous. Here we go. It's getting to concussion already, she thought. The day before, Billy had beaten her again. Only a week later, when the nausea and dizziness still did not stop, Catherine realized that she was pregnant. When she heard the news, Billy's face changed. "Do you mean I'm going to have a child?" he asked Catherine, not believing his ears. "You and I are going to have a child together. My own son, my blood." Billy suddenly grabbed Catherine in his arms and started circling the room. "Put me down already," she asked grudgingly. She didn't want to give birth to an alcoholic husband who also beat her regularly. Billy understood her thoughts. He fell on his knees in front of Catherine, hugged her, pressed his cheek against her belly, where the life of his own baby was being born. "Catherine, Catherine," he whispered, "you forgive me. Forgive me, please. I will change. Everything will change in our lives." The woman was silent. She was unbearably disgusted to listen to her husband. Billy raised his head, looked at her, stood up and said angrily, "If you try to have an abortion, I'll kill you." The remaining months before the birth, her husband did not even touch Catherine with a finger. He was caring, always came home on time, did not drink. True, sometimes from her husband's shirt smelled strongly of women's perfume. But Catherine did not pay attention to this. Pregnancy was very difficult. She was constantly vomiting, whining in the lower abdomen. Sometimes the woman thought that it would be better if he beat her and had a miscarriage. She should have children with the man she loved, but she felt indifference mixed with hatred for Billy every day. At the next ultrasound, Billy went with her. Catherine lay on the couch, lifted her blouse. Her husband stared intently at the screen, as if he could understand what was appearing on it during the examination. But the polite nurse obligingly helped him make sense of it. "Here, look," she began, pointing her finger at the black and white floating image, and suddenly stopped talking. The woman was scrutinizing the monitor screen. "Wow, Daddy, congratulations, you have twins." Catherine, from surprise, lifted up, leaning on her elbow. "Are you sure?" she asked. "We have no twins in our family." "We have," her husband interrupted her. "My grandfather had a twin brother, only he died when he was a baby." "Well, you see," said the nurse, "it all makes sense now. And twins are good. They will always be together, will help each other in life, if anything." Billy and Catherine returned home in silence. They left Anthony at the neighbor's house for a while. When he saw his mother, he dropped the toy, smiled, and stretched out his arms. Well, come to me, my good, wanted to take in the arms of her son, Catherine, but her husband stopped her. You do not need to lift weights. Give him to me. Billy took Anthony, carried him home. Catherine thanked the neighbor. Catherine's husband now every day only talked about the twins, which are about to be born. We need to buy a big stroller and a crib for twins, he said. Catherine, you cannot imagine how I want them to come into the world sooner, how I want to take in my arms. All my friends have women give birth to one, and you're my good girl, two at once. They'll be jealous. Bringing something delicious from the store, he kept repeating, this is for my twins. Eat, dear. Feed the children. They need to grow. Catherine, his fuss about her pregnancy only annoyed. The labor began at night. Billy called an ambulance, met the doctor at the entrance. After examining Catherine, the doctor said, get dressed, get your things, and go down to the car. Catherine went into the hallway, where the bag prepared for the maternity hospital was already standing. Billy rushed after her. Stay with Anthony, she told her husband. No, I'm coming with you. Are you crazy? Catherine objected. He's just a little boy. You cannot leave him alone at home. What will he be? Argued Billy, tying the laces on his sneakers. If you don't stay with the baby, I'll give birth at home. Catherine cut him off and sat down on a chair. Billy straightened up. He realized that if he didn't send his wife to the hospital now, there might be complications. After thinking for a minute, he agreed. Okay, I'll sit with Anthony, but I'll walk you to the car and then I'll be back, he said in a more peaceful tone. Watching the ambulance pull away from the driveway, Billy was worried. At a leisurely pace, he headed around the corner of the house. There was a night bar in the neighboring 5-story building where alcohol was always available. Billy bought 2 bottles of vodka and went home. Anthony was crying while standing in the crib. The toddler woke up. Not finding his mother in sight, he became frightened. Billy entered the bedroom, looked at his stepson with an indifferent gaze. Well, what are you up for? Lie down, come on, he said, putting the child in bed and covering him with a blanket. The man closed the door and walked to the kitchen. He drank until the morning and so fell asleep at the table. He was roused from his drunken slumber by a phone call and Anthony's scream. Billy didn't immediately realize where to run to first. Grabbing the baby in his arms, he looked for the phone. The screen displayed a missed call from his wife. The man tried to call back, but the caller was already out of range. Damn it, Billy cursed as he put Anthony in the high chair. He dialed the number for the maternity ward. Hello, can you tell me, did my wife have a baby? What? Last name? He gave Catherine's details. The woman in the phone was silent for a while and then answered. Yes, she gave birth. 2 girls, weight 400 and 350. The twins are 52 centimeters tall. The mother feels fine. Like girls? Billy asked in a daze. You're not confused, are you? But the other end had already hung up. Billy sat down on a stool. Anthony was gnawing on his dryer, staring at his stepfather. Your mother gave you sisters, the man said to the child, as if he could understand what was going on in Billy's soul. He dreamed of a son, and when he learned that there would be twins, he already imagined how he would be a happy father of 2 boys, how he would be proud of them, walking on the playground. And this soulless Catherine could not even give birth to normal men, gave birth to girls. A wave of disappointment came over the man. He opened the refrigerator, took out a sealed bottle of vodka. On the day of discharge, Billy showed up at the hospital with a strong odor of booze. He was holding Anthony's hand. The boy was wearing stale clothes. In his hands was a bouquet of flowers showing signs of wilting. Well, Daddy, take your daughters in, the nurse said, wincing at the odor coming from the man. Billy took his daughters in his arms, and Catherine rushed to her son. Damaka, how I missed you, she exclaimed. The boy hugged his mother, did not want to let go of himself. At home, Billy put a bottle of vodka on the table. Let's drink to the health of our daughters, he said, pouring bitter vodka into 2 shot glasses. I'm feeding the children and I won't drink, Catherine refused. She was disgusted to look at the hungover husband. The woman undressed the girls, and Anthony stood nearby and looked at the sisters. Here, my good man, soon they will grow up, and you will play with them. You will have fun together. Grow up soon to be a protector for your sisters. The girls were named Luba and Cindy. Now Catherine had to give up work completely. With 3 children, she couldn't even work part-time. There was almost no help from Billy. More and more often they came home drunk, shouted loudly, accused his wife that she did not give birth to the sons. "What do I need this battalion of women for?" he said. "What am I going to do with them? Not to go fishing, not to chase a ball, and repair. Who will help me to make repairs? Who will give me a hammer?" Girls always loved their father more than their mother, tried to calm her drunken husband Catherine. "What do I there love? They love more. Yes, and me all the men laugh at me, call me a bracado." In fact, no one has never laughed at Billy. On the contrary, all their acquaintances said that 2 daughters is a double happiness, but he still wasn't happy. When the girls were 2 years old, Billy went on another bender. He didn't come home for a week. The fridge was completely out of food. Catherine didn't even have milk to boil porridge for the children. She had to beg her neighbor to babysit the kids and Anthony while she ran to the store. In the evening, Billy burst through the apartment door, barely able to stand. "Wife," he yelled from the doorway, "let's eat." Catherine lost her temper, her patience finally running out. "And you bought food then? Where have you been so many days?" she asked. "There is no food in the house, cooked from nothing. We are starving here. There's no one to go to the store." "Can't you do it yourself?" yelled the husband. "Don't you have any money? Are you saying that I'm a beggar, that I don't give you money, that I don't provide for the family?" Billy swung at his wife. Catherine quickly dodged, tried to leave to the bedroom, where the children had just fallen asleep. But her husband's strong arm caught up with her. Billy grabbed her, threw her on the floor, began to undress her. "I'm a good husband, now I'll prove it to you," he hissed in Catherine's ear, smelling of alcohol. The woman tried to escape from under the heavy body of her husband, but he pressed her harder and harder to the floor. "Go away," she screamed. "I'm sick of you." Her words were followed by a strong blow to the head. Before Catherine's eyes all blurred the closet, the chandelier on the ceiling, the sofa, her husband, looming over her with a raised fist. He beat his wife for a long time, hitting her face, her head, kicking her stomach, all over her body. Having vented his anger, Billy went to the kitchen, grabbing a started bottle of vodka from his jacket pocket in the hallway. "You'll know how to dislike a husband, how to argue with a man in his own house," he hissed through his teeth. Billy awoke in the deep night. Staggering, he made his way to the room where Catherine lay on the floor. "Hey, what are you lying around for?" he said, staring at his wife. "Get up, come on, I'm out of money. Give me a bottle." Catherine didn't answer and didn't move. Billy pulled her arm, trying to lift her up, but her limp body gave no sign of life. "She's passed out," the man thought. He bent over her face, listening to her breathing. Dead. Billy began to sober abruptly, coming to his senses. Slowly, the realization came to him of what had happened. He had beaten his wife to death. The man was frightened, spun around the room, not knowing what to do. Now he was going to jail, but he couldn't let that happen. He didn't want to go to jail. Sitting down on the couch, Billy wrapped his arms around his head, swayed like a cobra before it attacked, whimpered quietly, groaned. The only possible way out presented itself to him very clearly. It was necessary to hide the body, to carry it away from the house, to remove suspicion from himself. The man dressed, wrapped his wife's breathless body in a blood-stained rug, put him on his shoulder, and quietly left the apartment. He walked through the empty courtyard, crossed the wooded park area, and reached the lake. Stepping on the ice, he fell several times, dropping his wife's body, got up and dragged her again to the middle of the body of water. There were ice holes there. Billy lowered the corpse into the water, watched the black water take Catherine into its depths. When he got home, he cleaned up the dishes in the kitchen, mopped the floor in the room, tried to put things in order. Billy spent the rest of the night showering, shaving, getting himself back to normal. He realized that soon Catherine would be searched for, and maybe already in the morning she would be found by fishermen on the lake. He decided to report his wife missing, saying that she had left yesterday and had not returned. The police didn't accept the report. "Your wife will be found," said the captain in the front office. "It happens, wives stray, maybe at a girlfriend's house. Go home and wait. If she doesn't show up in 3 days, we'll take your statement." Billy was a mess. He had killed his wife, the mother of his children, with his own hands. Oh yes, he remembered about the children. They were playing on the floor. He had to feed them. The man opened the refrigerator, but it was empty. There was nothing on the shelves of the kitchen cabinets either. Billy scratched his forehead. We'll have to go to the store, he thought. He rang the doorbell for his neighbor. Veronica, hello. Please sit with mine for about 20 minutes, he asked. I'll run to the store real quick and buy some food. The woman reluctantly agreed. The man rushed to the supermarket, on the way making a list of things to buy in his mind. Ekaterina's body was discovered by fishermen. They pulled the dead woman out onto the ice and called the police. Drowned or something. They must have helped her. Who would go swimming at such a time? They reasoned among themselves while waiting for the investigation team. Billy was questioned. He was the first suspect in his wife's murder. Where did you be tonight? The investigator asked him. At home, he replied. Put the kids to bed. Watched TV. Then his daughter started crying. He started rocking her, calming her down. The mother wasn't home yet. His testimony was quite convincing. After some more questioning of the grief-stricken husband of the deceased, the police left. The investigation reached a dead end and was sent to the hanging. A few days later, Catherine's body was given to her husband so that he could bury her. Angelica volunteered to help with the funeral, or rather she sat with the kids and Billy ran to the cemetery to buy a place, then to the funeral home, then to the morgue. People whispered at the funeral, she was so young, she should have lived and lived. How will the children be without her now? She was such a good mom, caring, always with the kids. I can't believe she went out. And who killed her then? It's scary to live when you go out of the house and find yourself in an ice hole with a broken head. After Catherine's funeral, Angelica moved in with Billy. They had been meeting at her rented apartment for several years. Now they didn't have to hide, but could live together. Because of all this bad history, Billy was fired from the advertising agency. The boss for a long time did not like his absenteeism, as well as coming to work in a drunken state. We're going to have to part ways, Sarah said, looking at the man carefully through the thick lenses of her glasses. Billy got drunk again out of grief. Angelica was happy to keep him company. Drinking with the man in the kitchen, she lamented. What are we going to live on now? You need to get a new job right away. We can't survive on my salary alone. Do you think it's so easy to find a job in our town? Billy could barely move his tongue. And how are we going to feed your sons and daughters? Angelica persisted. The man didn't know the answer to that question. Now he was concerned with something else. Angelica, go to the store and buy a bottle, he asked, twirling an empty vodka bottle in his hand. Buy something for the kids to eat. He pulled out a few bills from his pocket, all that was left of the settlement from the agency. The children whimpered, sitting on the floor among the toys. They wanted to eat. The drunken father put a piece of rye bread in their hands. He said, putting his finger to his lips, now Mama Angelica will bring you food. The woman returned with 2 bottles of vodka. She didn't know what to buy for the children, so she took some sausage and milk. Do you think they will eat the sausage? Billy asked. I don't know, we eat, and they will eat, Angelica justified. Well, if they refuse, we'll eat it ourselves. It's an appetizer. And in general, Janaka, I don't have to feed your children. You think about their sustenance. It's not easy to feed all 3 of them, the man said thoughtfully. Yeah, especially since Anthony isn't yours at all. And now you'll have to raise him, spend money. Suddenly, Angelica had an unexpected thought. Billy, you take him to an orphanage, she said, lighting a cigarette. An orphanage? No, it's complicated. Besides, if I give him up, I could be deprived of parental rights to my daughters, and they're my own blood girls. But Anthony's not my own, so he's an extra mouth to feed, Angelica said. Anthony is not my own, but I won't go to the orphanage. Then Social Security will drag me in. They'll start checking, and I don't work. You want me to be deprived of my daughters? Angelica pouted her lips. She did not like the prospect of bringing up and raising Katia's son, impregnated by who knows who. And you do not give him up on the documents and just throw him to the orphanage. We have a large orphanage. The gates there are big wrought iron gates. They will find him and put him in the institution. The man's mistress suggested a way out of the situation. After thinking for a while, Billy agreed with Angelica that it was the only way out. That way the girls would stay with him and he would get rid of the extra mouth. When it got dark outside the window and the lights went out in the windows of the houses, he and Angelica dressed Anthony, gave him his favorite stuffed dog, and drove him to the gates of the orphanage. "Sit there," they told the child and left. It was snowing outside. The February wind howled, scaring the 5-year-old boy. To make it less scary, he closed his eyes and held the stuffed dog tighter to him. Anthony was found in a snowdrift by children who, together with the guard John, were clearing snow on the territory of the children's institution. The boy was treated and left at the orphanage. The administration of the orphanage appealed to the police, but no one declared the boy wanted. When asked, "What is your name?" the child answered, "Anthony." This name was left to him, and the surname was given Stone because they found him so unexpectedly in a snowdrift near the gate. The boy quickly became friends with Evan and Kira. The boys were older than Anthony by a couple of years, and they were careful to tutor him at first, teaching him to be smart. "When you go to dinner," Carrot Top said with a businesslike look, "don't eat the gingerbread at once. Take it with you. At night, you know how hungry you'll feel. That's when the stash will come in handy." Carrot Top always had food in his nightstand. In addition to gingerbread, at night he would pull crusts of bread out of the drawer. The boys would chew on them together, looking out the window at the night sky. Sometimes the boys fought. Once they fought on the playground, rolling around on the grass, beating each other up. What the boys had disagreed about, no one will ever know. Watchman John was the first to notice the fight, hobbling and limping on his right leg. He hurried to the playground. "Break it up," he shouted sternly, but the boys continued to roll around on the grass. Then John took a bucket, drew water, and poured it on the boys. To his surprise, the cold water did not cool the fervor of the fighting friends. They mutilated each other for nothing. Friends with each other, thought the watchman, remembering an old saying about friendship. In their school days, the group would have adventures, climbing out through a hole in the fence and going into town. No one knew about their secret crawlway. The board was held on a single nail, easily pushed off and put back in place. And the boys, sneaking past the slumbering watchman John, carried through the forest park to the city streets, where the colorful lights of signs, beautiful cars, the opportunity to forget about the walls of the orphanage for a while. On one such night, they sat on the shore of the lake and lit a fire. Sparks flew high above the flames, mesmerizing. Carrot had sticks in his hands, on which he strung pieces of bread. The bread fried on the fire was fragrant, crunching pleasantly in the mouth. "Is that what you want to be?" Evan asked Anthony. "I haven't thought about it yet. I'll probably go to technical school," the teenager answered, putting branches on the fire. "You want to live all your life on one salary?" The boy laughed at Anthony's naivety. "Why? Everyone lives like that." The younger opponent tried to argue with his older friend. "Wrong. Not everyone. I don't want to study at all. There are many ways to get money and not go to work like a leper." "What are those ways?" Anthony was surprised. "I'll tell you later," entreated the company Carrot Top. The teenager had devised a whole plan on how to get rich. In his imagination, everything seemed easy and simple. It seemed that the plan of enrichment thought out in detail. One day, when they again climbed through the fence and escaped from the orphanage, Carrot Top told Kira and Anthony, "It's very simple. We find some car with a woman driving it. She gets in the car, starts backing up. And then Kara gets rear-ended from behind. Come on. I don't want to end up in the hospital or crippled for life. I don't want to get run over." "Don't worry," Carrot Top reassured the girl. "You fake it like you're going to get hit. You'll only get a slight bump with the bumper. Baba will jump out of the car, and you pretend to cry that you are very hurt. I know these chickens in expensive cars." She'll start wooing and anning around you, saying, "Girl, let me help you." And you don't get up in a hurry, just squirm there on the ground. Me and Anthony will sneak up to the car and steal the bag with the money. Then we all run together, dump the bag and keep the money. That's my brilliant plan. "That's stealing," Anthony resisted. He obviously didn't like Carrot Top's plan. "Oh, come on. These women have so much money in expensive foreign cars that only chickens do not peck. They're not going to be shortchanged." Anthony and Kira thought about it. Then the girl said, "I agree. I'm tired of wearing orphanage clothes. I want fancy jeans and a purse." "Anthony, are you coming?" Evan asked his friend. The teenager hesitated. He thought that this game of robbery would end badly, but he didn't want to be separated from his friends either. "We can try," he said uncertainly. "It is decided," concluded Carrot Top. "Tomorrow we'll go to work." Having got out through the hole in the fence, they walked towards the center of the city. There were cars rushing along the streets, people hurrying somewhere, mothers with strollers and children running around in the park. All these people had different lives, not like Kira, Carrot Top, and Anthony. In the orphanage they were taken care of, but the absence of parents was a heavy burden on the heart of each pupil. Anthony always wanted to know all the details of his origin, who his mom and dad were, how he ended up in a snowdrift at the gate of the orphanage. When the time came, the teacher Ariana would call the older kids, pull out their personal files, and tell them what they knew from the child's birth story. One day, Anthony approached her himself. "Ariana, do you know who my parents are? It's not like I was found in a cabbage patch." "Not in the cabbage, Anthony, in a snowdrift," smiled the teacher, but after a second her face became serious. "When you came to us, or rather when we found you, we tried to find out all the information about you, but it is too scarce. No one's wanted you, no one's been looking for you, so we don't have any accurate information." Anthony bit his lip in frustration. Strange, if his parents do not care about the fate of their son. Why did they bring him into the world? He once shared his thoughts with John, the caretaker. The children of the orphanage were friends with the man, trusted him as their own grandfather, and he was kind to them. In John's room, the walls were hung with posters of motorcycles and photos of races. The boys looked at them with interest, and the watchman was happy to talk about the peculiarities of technology. "Why don't you ride a motorcycle now?" Anthony asked once. John, even then, many years ago, when he came out of the hospital, vowed not to participate in the races anymore. He remained lame, no matter how hard the doctors tried. The bones in his right leg fused incorrectly. The apparatus didn't help either. One leg remained a little shorter than the other. "There's a time for everything, Anthony," the watchman replied, after some thought. "I had mine. Now I'm fighting you." The man liked working at the orphanage. Constant contact with children brought back his youth. He never had any offspring of his own, and here he had a whole group of noisy boys and girls. "John, why do people have children?" Anthony asked. "So they can put them in an orphanage?" "It's not like that, kid," answered the man. "You see, there are different situations in life. Sometimes parents die." "Why would that be?" interrupted the teenager. "For all kinds of reasons. Someone gets sick, someone gets into an accident, accidents happen." "Why do you think I was abandoned?" The pupil persisted. "I can't tell you that. Almost nothing is known about you. Even your date of birth is not in your file. They wrote it down at random, just chose a beautiful number. So I'm like an invisible person, like I'm there, but I'm not." "Don't worry so much," the man reassured me. "In any case, each person builds his own life, his own destiny. You will grow up, study, maybe get married, have children of your own, and then you will understand everything." He looked sadly in the footsteps of the departing guy. It was really hard for him to live without knowing anything about himself. It's like in nature. If a plant has no roots, then the top does not grow. Anthony had no roots, or rather, he knew nothing about them. He just lived his life as it happened. He's a good kid. I feel sorry for him. The guy spotted a car outside the supermarket. A beautifully dressed woman of about 50 got out of it, and she was holding a purse. "I wish I had one of those," Kira thought. They stood behind a tree and watched. Picking the alarm button, closing the car, the woman went to the entrance of the store. "Let's wait. Should be out soon," Evan said. The woman did, indeed, come out about 10 minutes later. She unlocked the car, threw her purse on the passenger front seat, got behind the wheel, and put the key in the ignition. The car started back up, and suddenly, the woman heard a thud. Looking in the rearview mirror, she saw a girl falling under the car. "Jesus!" cried the woman and jumped out of the car. "Girl, how come? What are you in pain?" "Please forgive me. I didn't see you." "Oh, it hurts," theatrically cried and squirmed Kira, sitting on the ground. "Auntie, you hit me with your car." "Oh, that hurts." "Where does it hurt?" The woman was trying to feel the girl's feet. Meanwhile, Anthony was already running away with her purse in his hands. "Wait, I'll call an ambulance." The woman hurried to the driver's door to get a phone out of her purse, but she was not in the front seat. She turned around. There was no one near the car either. The girl she had hit and wanted to help was gone. Satisfied with the operation, they bought some goodies, sausages, bread, and went to their place on the lake shore. They laughed, satisfied with their first successful outing. "You see, Anthony, everything has been thought out. Even Redhead was proud of himself. I told you it would work out." The woman turned out to be a real rich woman. Her purse was full of large bills, which the guy spent on anything for a week. Kira bought herself some jeans and Carrot bought a chronometer watch. Anthony decided to set aside his share, giving to the communal pot just for food. He had a dream to find his parents and to realize the plan will need money. "In a week we'll go to work again," said Carrot Top, chewing sausages with bread, roasted on the fire. Dima did not like the whole story. It was pure theft, for which sooner or later one could go to jail. He understood that, so he tried to dissuade his friends. "Maybe you shouldn't, it's illegal." Anthony's feeble attempt to bring Kira and Carrot's mind back to Kira and Carrot protested. Kira put her arms around the teenager's neck. "Come on, it's easy and simple. No one will know," she urged. "Well, we'll go a few more times and then we'll stop. We're about to graduate from the orphanage anyway." Anthony liked Kira. The pretty girl always found an approach to him, could persuade him to any adventure. The first time they climbed through the hole in the fence, Anthony resisted too. "They'll be looking for us," he told his friends. "Oh, who needs us?" Kira objected. "We'll go for a walk and then come back. Everyone's asleep anyway." Anthony couldn't refuse the girl. It so happened that he himself did not notice how Kira took him in a turn, twisted the ropes, and always got her way. And now, looking into his eyes, she was persuading him. "Well, what are you, Anthony? We had it all worked out the first time. It will work out now." After hesitating, Anthony agreed. On the appointed day, they went to the shopping center, where the parking lot was always full of cars. They tracked down a richly dressed woman. "Look, there's a hottie pulling up," Carrot Top pointed out. "She's wearing jewelry. She's definitely got a lot of money." The guys took their positions and hid. When the woman came out of the shopping center and went to the car, Kira crouched behind the rear bumper. Now the aunt would start the car, start backing up, and push Kira. She would squirm and play the victim again, and the guys would do their thing. Suddenly, someone pulled her by the hood of her sweatshirt and dragged her away. "Come with me." Kira twisted around and saw John. "You've had enough of this. It's time for honor, which, apparently, you don't have." The guard was dragging her out of the parking lot. "Where the hell did he come from?" Ivan cursed. "He ruined the whole operation, and now he's got to get the money. He'll report us to the principal, and we'll be locked up, and they won't let us go anywhere else." The boys watched with annoyance as the guard dragged the girl. He clung tightly to her arm and walked in silence. Kira dragged behind John with her head down. "Got her. Who'd have thought it?" The guard dragged Kira into his cubbyhole and sat her down on a chair. "Tell me, what were you doing there?" He began his interrogation. "Nothing. I was just sitting there." "Don't you have anywhere else to sit but under cars in the parking lot?" John looked at the girl carefully. He understood everything and saw Evan and Anthony standing behind the tree, but he decided to start with Kira, and the guys would come to rescue her themselves. The watchman was sure of that. And so they did. Not an hour later, there was a gentle knock on the watchman's door. "Come in, you idlers," John shouted. "So you've made up your minds to spend some time in prison?" "John, we didn't mean to," began Carrot Top. "We just need money. The food in the orphanage is bad, and things are just old stuff. And that's why you have to steal." "Where do you get the money?" Kira squealed. "Have you tried working?" "Where would they take us?" Evan justified. "You can go to the crossroads to wash cars or to the market as loaders. You've grown so big. Aren't you ashamed of robbing poor, weak women?" "You know how much money they have," Evan began, but he was silenced by John's stare. "Whatever it is, it's their money, not yours. If I ever find out what you're up to again, I'll have you in trouble." "This conversation is over," the watchman cut him off. "Get out of here, you bums, and you, Anthony, stay here." The boy looked at John in surprise. I wonder what it was that the man wanted from him. Now we'll lecture, teach the right life, thought Anthony. John was silent. pouring tea into 2 cups. From the locker, he took out a cookie. "Help yourself," the watchman offered. Anthony hesitantly took a treat from the vase. "Kara and Evan are slackers," John said, "but you're the one who got involved in this criminal activity. What's your problem?" Anthony didn't say anything. It's easy to ruin your life forever, but you'll be bitter afterwards. You'll regret one wrong deed 100 times, and it'll be too late. Yes, maybe you lack a lot in the orphanage, but you have to strive for the best. You have to study, then go to work. When you graduate, you'll be given an apartment as an orphan from the state. That's when your independent life will come. And if you go to the zone, you'll lose everything. You'll leave yourself no chance for a good life. "I want to find my parents." Anthony looked up at the guard. It was his cherished dream. "You can't live a good life without knowing who you are." "I don't know who I am. Maybe my parents have been searching for me all my life. Maybe I have siblings and grandparents like normal kids. Maybe they suffer that I'm lost." John stared wistfully out the window. He felt sorry for the boy. He was nothing like the children who were brought up in the orphanage. For many years of work, he had seen a lot of things, more and more convinced that genetics affects the future. What is written on the birth, that cannot be replaced, and even the most humane education will not help. Children of thieves become thieves. It happens all the time. But it's not like Anthony was born into a family of thieves. There was something different about him. "I'd already told you that finding your roots is almost impossible." The watchman tried once again to convince Anthony to forget about looking for his parents. "I want to hire a private detective. That's why I need money." The guy shared his plans. "A detective, you say?" John looked at the boy carefully. "And tell me, friend, with what data you come to the detective? What are you going to tell him?" "My name is Anthony. My surname is made up. I'm looking for my parents, about whom I know nothing." "You don't even know your real date of birth." "So what? Private detectives can do anything." Anthony truly believed that. "Everybody can," the watchman grumbled. "Okay, go on, detective." Left alone, John wondered how to help the guy and if it could be done without any information. He had an old friend with whom they had raced motorcycle races together when they were young. Then Oliver went into the army, and after that he worked for the police. When he retired, he was a lieutenant colonel, now called Oliver and nothing else, a respected man, a good investigator. John was determined to go to him, even though it wasn't his policy to bother people and use his connections. He just really wanted to help the boy, and maybe something would become clearer in his case. Oliver lived at his old place of residence. He had a lot of free time on his pension. The police lieutenant colonel had bought himself a boat and often went fishing. And this time he was checking his fishing gear, unwinding the line, going over floats, when the doorbell rang. On the doorstep stood his old friend. At how in their youth they raced motorcycles, competed, took cups. They were even in the newspapers. And then the friend crashed, was in the hospital for a long time. Communication gradually came to naught. Oliver was very happy to see an unexpected guest on the doorstep of his apartment. "John, are you there? I can't believe it," he exclaimed, recognizing his friend at once. It's me. I'm not mistaken," John smiled. "Come in, dear. Why are we standing in the doorway?" Oliver invited the watchman. "Are you alone or with your mistress?" John asked. "I'm alone. My mistress died 5 years ago. She had cancer. The doctors couldn't save her. At least she didn't suffer long. I'm also alone. My personal life has not worked out. No wife, but 40 children," John shared. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand. I work in an orphanage. They are all my relatives. I feel sorry for the kids, so I deal with them in my spare time." Who would have thought John would be a father to orphans? Oliver was surprised. The men went into the kitchen. Oliver fidgeted, put the kettle on the stove, and began to take out sausage, cheese, and a bottle of white wine from the refrigerator. "It's a sin not to celebrate such a meeting, friend," he said, laughing and taking out shot glasses from the cupboard. The men drank and snacked, and Oliver poured another round. "I don't ask how you found me, John," Oliver said, snacking on a slice of smoked sausage. "I haven't changed my place of residence. That's what brought you to me. It can't be longing or nostalgia for the old days." "That too," said the watchman, raising a shot glass. "Well, here's to the meeting." "To the meeting. It's good to see you." "You see, Oliver," John started a serious conversation. I have a boy in the orphanage, Anthony. In general, his story is very strange, incomprehensible. If other children who get into the institution, there is at least some data. This one has none. The child comes from the maternity hospital. There is a document called a waiver. That is, the mother and father refuse to bring up and raise their son or daughter. Or here is another case, not less frequent, when parents drink, do not look after the child. Then it is taken away through the court. Or, if the father and mother die, the orphan is sent to an orphanage. And this one we found in a snowdrift in February as a 5-year-old. The retired police lieutenant colonel listened attentively to his friend. He didn't yet understand what he was getting at, but he tried to catch the logical thread of the story. You see, John went on, it seems that he had been dumped, just left on that cold winter night at the gate of the orphanage, put him in a snowdrift, gave him a toy and left him. Not people, but animals. Oliver shook his head. How can you leave a little child in the cold? When we found him, he was so cold he couldn't even speak. Well, we warmed him up, washed him, fed him. He's a big boy now, but he can't stop thinking about who left him there. He wants to find his parents, you know? Oliver poured the vodka into shot glasses, took his own and gave another to John. I understand. Why wouldn't I understand? Everyone wants to know his roots, and this is such a story that gives me goosebumps. Help me, Oliver, find a lead on the kid. He wants to hire a PI, even went to the trouble of stealing. That's too bad. Oliver put his finger up. I understand I stopped him in time, caught him in the act, so to speak. I don't think he'll do it again. He's a good kid, and he could be good. I don't know how I can help, the retired lieutenant colonel thought. What year did you say he came to you? John named the exact date when Anthony was found in a snowdrift at the gate of the orphanage. It's a day that's etched in his memory for the rest of his life. He had never seen such a brutal treatment of a small child. And if the kid had frozen, they would have found a corpse, not a boy. Let's do it this way, Oliver suggested. I'll visit my colleagues on the police force, see if anyone remembers anything. I was still in the department that year, but I don't remember anything about missing children. That's just it, John said. We've been asking around, but no one's put out a BLLO for him. No one's been looking for the kid. I promise, John, said the old pal. I'll look into it. Find out everything I can. I'll find some thread. It can't be that there was no information about the man at all. Friends still sat, drank, talked about the past, shared the news. John returned to the orphanage hopeful. His buddy had always been a man of his word, so since he promised, he would do his best to find some information about Anthony and his family. He realized that the guy wouldn't rest until he found out everything. He could make a mess of things, cripple his life. That's why he was determined to help Anthony, and he hoped that his old friend would help him. A few days later, Oliver called John. There is some information. Can you come to me? He asked. Of course I can. When the old buddies met, the lieutenant colonel had photocopies of some documents in his hands. He stacked them neatly, laid them out in front of him. John waited for Oliver to start his story. I wondered what the former investigator had unearthed. Your Anthony has a murky history, Oliver said. In February of that year, when you found your family, a woman's body was found in the lake. Fishermen fished it out in the morning when they came to the ice hole. There was no chance of identifying the woman, but everything became clear when her legal husband contacted the police. He reported his wife missing. In the duty room, he was sent home. They said he would go for a walk and your wife would come. The time had passed very little since the disappearance. And when the woman was fished out of the lake, they immediately remembered this man. He was questioned then. I wasn't present, but my colleagues remembered. He didn't look too upset. Of course, he was the first suspect in the murder. Why did they decide it was murder? The watchman asked without understanding. You see, the corpse had multiple injuries, beatings, teeth knocked out. Her face was like a mess. Someone had beaten her badly. Given that the woman was wearing a robe, we thought it was the husband. He, of course, denied everything. At that time, there were 3 small children in the house, a twin girl of 2 years old and a 5-year-old boy. As we later found out, the boy was not the man's own son. He got married when the bride was already pregnant. Neighbors said that recently the spouses often quarreled, were heard shouting, swearing, crying children. So it was the husband who killed the woman? John asked. It's not that simple. the lieutenant colonel said. He said she left home in the evening, that when he came home from work he found the children alone in the apartment. Also resented how she could have left them unattended. He said he spent the whole night taking care of the babies, putting them to bed, soothing them when they cried, calling for their mom. I wondered, John said thoughtfully, why did she leave the house in a robe in winter? That's the point, continued the old friend. A rug with traces of blood was also fished out of the lake. But the man, that is, the woman's husband, did not admit that it was a rug from their apartment, said it was the first time he'd ever seen it. There were no witnesses to suggest otherwise. That rug is what led to the dead end of the investigation. Of course, the husband's alibi was weak. The children could not confirm that their father had spent the whole night with them, but there was no reason to say otherwise. There were no traces of blood or fighting in the house. Everything was clean. The children were fed, neatly dressed. This guy was just a good father. Maybe the investigation wasn't thorough enough, didn't dig hard enough. Eventually, the case was closed. What's our Anthony got to do with it? The watchman didn't understand. I have a suspicion that the eldest child, the 5-year-old boy who was in the apartment with his twin sisters, is your Anthony. Why would you say that? I started researching the rest of the family's life. Not much is known about them, but there is something. After the wife died, the guy started living with another woman. According to neighbors, they drank a lot. Apparently, they did not care much about the children. At least, they were almost never seen on the street and in the yard with the kids. But they were often seen coming from the store with wine. What did Anthony have to do with this? John, who didn't understand anything, kept asking. The puzzle, which was to shed light on the story, was not yet formed in his head. Anthony's appearance in the orphanage. After graduating from high school, the twin sisters left town. Their whereabouts were unknown. You can, of course, file a search and find them, but it will take time. And there's no record of the boy at all. It's as if he never existed at all, and one would think so if it weren't for the criminal case. It involves 3 children, and in fact, only the fate of the sisters is traced. So John began to guess the man got rid of his wife to live with another woman. He didn't need the child, who was not his own by blood, so he decided to get rid of him too, and dropped him off at the orphanage gates. Is that it? It turns out so, agreed the lieutenant colonel, but the evidence is nil. Even if we find the sisters, they will not help. They were too young and probably do not even know that they had an older brother. What kind of a killer would do that to a child? Bring him to the orphanage, turn him in, write a waiver, and that's it. Why freeze the kid out? You don't know our system, said an old friend. If he had done as you say, he could have been deprived of parental rights to the other children, the twins. And the man must have cared about his daughters. Can you find out how to find this man? Is he even alive? John asked. Already found out, said the lieutenant colonel solemnly. Alive, not very healthy, doesn't work anywhere, but he always finds something to drink. Is he an alcoholic? Not without it, replied the old friend, handing his friend a photocopy of a criminal case with the data of a man who may have killed his wife and left a child at the gates of the orphanage on a cold February night. Thanks, friend, I'll be grateful to you. John shook hands with his old friend. He returned to the orphanage, immersed in heavy thoughts. How much Anthony had to go through in the first 5 years of his life. At this age, children already understand a lot of things, and if his stepfather beat his mother in front of the child, the boy could not help but see it. What if he actually killed his wife and Anthony saw it? Maybe that's why the stepfather decided to get rid of the stepson. However, children's memory is selective. The brain sometimes blocks the information that the child does not want to remember, as if closing access to it. John still managed to learn something, but what to do with this knowledge? Anthony is still a teenager. He is not able to analyze information with a cold mind. Explosive can make a mess. The watchman decided not to tell the boy anything yet. Time will show, and everything will be put in its place. It was time to graduate from the orphanage. For 2 years, Anthony had been waiting for this day. Kira and Carrot Top were in schools. They were older and had left the institution before Anthony. Sometimes the friends would meet up and walk around town, but they weren't going to rob women in cars anymore. Kira was completely overwhelmed with studying to be a seamstress. She bragged to Anthony about the new things she designed and sued herself. "Look at my new dress," she said, twirling around the boy. "Where do you think I got it?" "The market?" he wondered. "Or at the mall?" "No, you can't guess. I made it myself," Kira proudly announced. "You're a real fashion designer. It's beautiful," Anthony said, looking at the girl's dainty figure in her clothes. Evan Carrot Top was studying to be a welder. "When I graduate, I'll go to the north." He shared with Anthony his plans for the future. "I'll work there on a shift. They say they pay good money. The government hasn't given me an apartment yet anyway. If I'm lucky, I'll earn my own place. Welders are needed everywhere, and their wages are high." That day, Anthony, like other children of his age, received his certificate. The director of the orphanage traditionally called the children one by one into her office, pulled out their personal files, told what was known about their origin, parents, appearance in the orphanage. Only Anthony was not called, and he stood at the door, waiting to hear. "Stone, come in." When the principal left the office, he looked at her questioningly. "Why are you looking at me like that, Stone?" She put her arm around the boy's shoulders. "You know we don't know anything about your family. No one's been looking for you in all these years. My advice to you, Anthony, is to start your life over as if nothing ever happened." "I'm not an alien who suddenly appeared on Earth," the boy objected. "Someone gave birth to me." "That's true, but we don't know who, though we try to find out." The principal walked down the corridor, and Anthony looked after her. He used to think that the adults were hiding some terrible secret from him, some information that could, in their opinion, harm Anthony. But now he realized no one knew anything about him. Anthony would spend the summer at the orphanage. He would only leave the institution when he went to school somewhere. Where exactly, he hadn't decided yet. The boy sat on the swing with his legs tucked up. The old swing creaked slightly, and this creaking brought to mind different thoughts. Anthony was brought out of his brooding stupor by John's voice. "Hey, Anthony, let's go talk," shouted the watchman. The boy got up from the swing and wandered to the man's call. The watchman's room was in semi-darkness, a dim light shining through the dusty glass. No children's voices could be heard from behind the door. John motioned for the boy to sit down, and he sat down across from him. He had been thinking for days about how to start a difficult conversation with the boy. The watchman was sure it was time to tell the boy about the strange criminal case the lieutenant colonel had told him about. It was very suspicious and could well be connected with Anthony's fate. "You know," John began, "I learned a story not long ago. You just listen to it and then decide whether you need it or not." John consistently told the guy about a family with 3 children, about the corpse of a woman found in an ice hole, about the kids, which at first there were 3, but the eldest disappeared without a trace. The boy listened in silence. Suddenly, murky images began to surface in his memory. They seemed to be stored somewhere in the subcortex of the brain and one by one burst out of the bowels of memory. Here were 2 little girls wrapped in diapers crying. Here was a woman being beaten by a man. Here was a little boy who was watching the beatings from behind the door jamb. All this was not happening to him, but where were these strange visions coming from? "John, do you think it's my family?" the boy asked when the watchman had finished his story. "Very possibly, Anthony," the man replied. "You see, the thing that confused me and my police buddy the most about this story was that the boy was missing. We know about the girls, that they finished school, left their father, but what happened to the boy? No one knows. And the timing fits. That whole thing happened in February of that year too, when we found you at the gate. Do you know where to find this man?" Anthony decided he had to find out for himself. "I know, Anthony," John replied, "but you've got to think 100 times about whether you need to." "I know I do." The next day, Anthony went into town. In his shirt pocket, there was a cherished piece of paper with an address on it. The boy hoped that when he went there, he would remember something. Perhaps then it would become clear to him what happened to his family and why he ended up in an orphanage. Going up to the 3rd floor, he rang the shabby doorbell. No one opened it. The boy pushed the door open. He hesitantly entered the apartment. "Hello," he shouted. "Is anyone home?" In silence, Anthony walked past the kitchen and peeked in, opening the door. There was an open bottle of vodka on the table, crust of bread, salt scattered from a wooden salt shaker. There were empty bottles on the floor, dirt everywhere, and there were no curtains on the windows. The boy walked further down the corridor. In a large room, there was a man lying on a couch. Unshaven, dressed in dirty, unkempt clothes, the uncle was sleeping. "Hey, wake up," Anthony called out. But the man didn't respond. He gave no sign of life at all. Moving closer, Anthony shook him by the shoulder. The man's head popped off the pillow. He was dead. Realizing that he had discovered a dead body at the address John had given him, the guy was terrified. Not knowing what to do, he took a quick step toward the front door. Suddenly, a woman appeared on the threshold. Her hair was disheveled, her crumpled dress sat crookedly, and she smelled strongly of booze. "Who are you?" she asked in a drunken voice. Anthony didn't know what to say. "There's a dead man in there," was all he could utter. "What dead man?" the woman said in a slurred voice, pushing the guy back into the apartment. "Over there, in the room on the couch, a man." Swaying, the aunt walked deeper into the hallway. "He's not dead. He's sleeping, Billy. He's just drunk," she said, leaning over the man on the couch. "You're going to drink?" the woman said to Anthony. "You better touch him. He's cold and doesn't move," he said, ignoring the strange woman's offer. "And who are you anyway?" Suddenly coming to her senses, she asked. "I'm Anthony. I'm looking for Billy," the guy replied. "Is that him?" The aunt grabbed the man's head with both hands and began to shake and kiss his face. Suddenly she froze, slowly sank to the floor near the couch. "Is he dead or what?" she said quietly. "Apparently dead," the boy replied. "And who are you?" "And I'm his wife," the woman howled quietly, wrapping her arms around her head. "Oh, bye. What is this doing? How can it be? Why did you die?" Realizing that nothing could be obtained from this drunken aunt, Anthony left the apartment and rang the doorbell to the neighbors. A woman opened the door. She had a cooker in her hands, and the apartment smelled of soup. "Please call the police," the guy asked. "Your neighbors have a dead body in their apartment." The woman looked at Anthony carefully and said, "Drunk, so Billy, I'll call 02 now. Hold on, young man." Anthony remained standing in the stairwell. When the police arrived, he was asked to stay for an interview, as he had discovered the body. The neighbor was also questioned. While answering the officer's questions, she kept looking at the strange guy. He reminded her of someone. "State your name," the police officer said. "Demetrius Stone," the guide answered. Suddenly, the neighbor splashed her hands, jumped up from her stool, ran up to the guy. "My God, Anthony, it can't be you," she exclaimed, gazing into his face. The neighbor, who once long ago drove with little Anthony, recognized in the young man the missing child of Catherine. The woman and Dimma were offered to go to the police station to understand everything in detail. From the police, Anthony returned with the neighbor to her apartment. The woman long told the guy about his mother, about his short childhood in the family, about his stepfather, who brutally beat Catherine, about her suspicions that it was Billy who killed Anthony's mother. Tears flowed down the guy's face. The truth about his life was bitter, but he finally recognized it, and it became easier on his heart.